Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. Last time we got together with this gentleman, I learned so much about, I'll call it down south. I'm in New York, so for me that would be down south. But the charm and the wonderful architecture and homes available in New Orleans. And he is very much plugged into that as a broker and co-owner of the Witry Collection Real Estate in that area. He's been doing this literally for decades and decades in that area. And we're going to learn a lot today about what you should be looking for when you're going to buy a home. It doesn't matter where it is, but those things that maybe we overlook, what should be on our radar. He is our diamond of the decade. So great to have him back here. Rector is back on the program. How you doing today, Brad?
I'm well, thank you. How about yourself?
Fantastic. And honestly, I am in between homes. I sold one, just renting now because just haven't found one that resonates with me. And here in the New York, a suburb of market, it's just not the best time to buy in terms of prices. But I'm looking, and also I'm also ever since I saw some of the homes that you have available there. That was an eye-opener in terms of price and charm and all of that. What are some of those things that we should be keeping on our radar when it comes to looking for a home anywhere?
Well, I think one of the most important things that I tell people from the very beginning, when I first meet with a potential buyer, I do a buyer's consultation. And I always suggest to people that you need to make a list. And in the list, there needs to be 2 columns. And on one side, you need to put down all the things that your house absolutely has to have. And then you make in the other column, I call that your want list. Like, for example, I want a really wonderful kitchen. Well, maybe you find a house that checks the vast majority of your boxes, and the kitchen space is great, but it hasn't been renovated in 20 years. It doesn't have sleek cabinetry, high-end appliances, quartzite countertops, and you really want that sort of sleek look. Well, if the house checks the rest of your boxes, it's got everything else you need, everything else you want, then you've got to factor in, what's it going to look like for me to do a kitchen renovation? And, when I first moved to New Orleans almost 20 years ago, that's the position that I operated from. I looked at a lot of houses in a variety of neighborhoods. And, I found one in a neighborhood that had really caught my attention. It had independent bedrooms, which in New Orleans, there's a thing called a shotgun house where you virtually walk through one room to get to the next room, to get to the next room, and so on. So, so your bedrooms don't really have privacy. Well, this had what is called a side hall. It's a hallway that goes down, one side of the house, and everything sort of opens up off of that. The kitchen was a really important room for me because I love to cook. Well, the kitchen was exactly what I described. It was really good space, but it didn't have, it hadn't been renovated, and what had been done to it when the house had been renovated, 10 years earlier was what I refer to as contractor grade. Formica countertops, inexpensive appliances, inexpensive cabinetry. So, in my mind, it had a great yard for my dogs. It had, all this wonderful space and all this wonderful charm. So I was like, I redo the kitchen. So I tell people, have your 5-year plan of things that this house checks the vast majority of my boxes. And over the next, I'm going to plan to be here for at least 5 years. During that 5 years, I can renovate the kitchen. I can renovate the bathroom. And I think that's an important thing, is don't lose a house because you don't want to, that you really love, except for 1 or 2 elements that can be, more redesigned, renovated, and geared to your taste. There's no such thing as the perfect house. Unless you have custom built, I don't think there is the perfect house. There is a house that has all the things that you need in order for you to make it perfect for you. But then on the other hand, when you go to sell, it may be the same situation. The person coming in may be like, I love this, I love this, I love this, but I don't like this. But they buy the house anyway because the potential for them is there. Does that make sense?
It really does, and it brings back memories for me. The house that I sold in the last couple of years, I bought it in 2014. I always said it doesn't feel like home. I don't know what it is. It makes sense because of where it was located, the taxes, size of the property, all of that. But it just didn't feel homey to me. So I blew out the backyard. There was a lot of scrub brush back there, cleared the whole thing, renovated it, put a pool in, pavers, patio, made it a tropical paradise because that's kind of my thing. I made it what I wanted it to be. So to your point, you got to see past what you're seeing because sometimes we get stuck on it. No, this is not what I was looking for, but maybe it is. You got to see that.
Right. Yeah. Don't let the potential of someplace escape your opportunity to get it. If it's possible, if you have the vision, and can create, the perfect space. And not everybody's in a position to be able to renovate. That's what, when they first buy. That's why I always say have a 5-year plan. My kitchen was perfectly functional, but did I like it? Did I have was it when I went in there, did I relax and unwind? And which is, cooking for me is a big part of my personal life, and that's how I kind of decompress. So the kitchen's a very important room. Yeah, it wasn't that. And did I love spending time in that kitchen? No. But, within 4 years, I had created the kitchen of my dreams. And so, so I always tell people, don't let something elude you or escape and someone else get it because you can't see past what the potential is that you can create in this space. The space is there, you can create it. So, yeah.
Isn't it amazing, the feeling? Let's go psychological here for a second. The feeling that you have when you're in these spaces, like you're just resonating with me. I love my bedroom. Got to tell you, there's something about it. I have dark furniture in there, sort of like, old school Caribbean vibe, whitewash floors, big window, bright, airy. It just feels good. Now, my living room, it's okay. I need to do something with that at this time. It just doesn't have that warmth to it. But isn't it amazing how we connect with certain rooms? We feel a certain way.
Yes. I mean, I think everybody, for the vast majority of people, there is a room in particular that they want in a certain way, whether they want a really luxurious primary bathroom, because they like to go in and, that has a big soaking tub because they like to go in and fill the tub and just get in there and unwind from the day and relax and so on and so forth. So like I said, don't get tripped up over something that's lacking that when the potential is there. And I think that was, the house, like I said, my first house when I walked literally was less than halfway through the front 2 rooms. The layout of my house was such where they had opened up a wall and they combined 2 rooms, and it was separated in the middle by just a freestanding fireplace. And I was halfway into that front entry area, and I turned to my agent and I said, if the rest of the house is as good as this is the one.
Wow.
And I had been looking, now granted, I lived elsewhere and was traveling back and forth initially from California to here and then from Southeast Florida to here looking for property. So, it was over the span of a couple of years, and, but I probably looked at least 20 houses here in that time frame. And this one, as soon as I walked in there and, I was like, this feels right. And by the time I got to the back door and went out into the backyard and saw the backyard and the space there for my dogs and the kitchen, the potential of the bathroom, I was like, this is it. I can create the kitchen, I can create the bathroom, so on and so forth. So,
wow.
I think that's a no matter where you're buying at, that's a really crucial element to be mindful of and not lose track of.
How about the challenge of the expense? So, for example, it's always been said, kitchen, very expensive. So seeing that vision and having that not scare you away, how do you get around that?
I think it's just, do it over a period of time. You don't necessarily have to. Getting into a house is expensive. You've got your down payment, you've got your closing costs, your prepaid expenses. So, particularly like first-time home buyers, they don't necessarily have a lot in reserve. So that's what I call the 5-year plan. Just sort of plan to do this over a period of time. We've all made do, whether we were renting or, living in a place and, just waiting for the right opportunity and the funds to be available. And listen, you put your money into real estate, if you're in the right market, your property is appreciating, at a respectable percentage each year, and so you have the potential to possibly go to a home equity line of credit with your lender and do that kitchen renovation, do that bathroom renovation, build out the primary bedroom closet to create, kind of the closet of your dream. Tap into the equity that you have accumulated over being in your home. And, there's the home equity lines of credit are out there. They're usually pretty affordable. And that's how I just did some work on my current home. I took a small home equity line of credit to be able to do a couple of projects that I wanted to complete.
Now, you said something before, Brett, that kind of resonated with me, and I'm curious if it goes that way. You were in the house, and you said, if the rest of the house is like it is here, this is the one. Is it often that way where you walk into it and it's like, yeah, this is it? You know it from the start.
I think so. I think for most people, yes. And it may take you a while. Obviously, it took me a while. And, and I have clients that I've shown, 20 properties to, that type of thing. So it may take a little while to find the right place and what have you. But it's, I think most people, I'd say 95% of the people that I work with, we may look at 15 houses, and when they find the one, they walk in and it's like, I think this is it. That happens pretty frequently, to be honest with you. So, I think that, and sometimes, you find something that you think you like, and the timing's off, or there's multiple offers. There's multiple offers on the property or whatever, and it doesn't work out that you get the house. But I always tell people it's a situation where there's something better coming along. We're going to find it, type of thing.
What's the most properties that you've ever looked at with somebody before they finally found the one that they fell in love with?
I worked with clients off and on for a 3-year period. And I probably showed them 30 properties in that 3-year period before they finally found something.
I feel it's a lot of patience that you have to have on your side to do something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is not, it's the single largest purchase that most people make in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And forcing or pressuring people to make a snap decision when they're uncomfortable doing so is no benefit to anybody. You've potentially damaged your reputation, because if that client ends up regretting their decision, but they're kind of stuck and have to buy the house and regret doing so, you're not going to get them back as a client if they decide to sell in 5 years. They're not going to refer their family members to you. Your reputation is everything. And I always say to people, I don't need a commission check so desperately that I am willing to pressure people into making a decision that they are not prepared to make or comfortable making.
How about some of those other things that we should be looking out for, short of a home inspection, but immediately when you first walk in, look here, think about that, consider this. Some other things that you could share?
I think that, the major components, finding out, trying to get as much information even prior to making your offer, the major components such as the age of the roof, the age of the central air and heat, those kinds of things, because those are non-glamorous big-ticket items. That's all going to come out during the inspection, obviously. If you have a thorough home inspection done, those kinds of things are going to come out. But most contracts, at least our contract, and I believe the contracts in Florida, say that you're basing your offer based on the apparent condition at the time the offer was written. So, if you know that the stove is, on its last leg, you can't really go back to the seller and ask the seller for, $1,000 credit to replace the stove. You can, but the seller is going to be like, well, but the stove is what the stove is. It's apparent that it's, 20 years old type of thing. So I think trying to get as much information through disclosures and, questions asked if you're the buyer's agent, look closely at those major especially the non-glamorous, non-visible things. Siding, roof, again, HVAC, those kinds of things.
It almost sounds like, though, what you said before within the contract. It's pretty much an as-is situation. That's what it sounds like.
Well, and I think it certainly depends on the market. If it's a very active market with low levels of inventory and, when most properties are getting multiple offers, you've got to be prepared to maybe, for lack of a better way to put it, suck it up a little bit on the inspections. Because the seller may very well have what's known as a backup offer or two, where, they've got another offer that's similar to yours that came in after they accepted yours, and they accepted it as a backup offer, and it could potentially have a better price point. It could potentially have better terms for the seller, like the person's waiving the appraisal, the person's waiving the inspection period. In competitive markets, those things exist, and so you've got to know, you need to work with an agent that knows the market, that knows the supply and demand of the market, and, how to negotiate and navigate and advise you through those things.
More memories are coming back when you talk, Brett. And I overlooked this. It wasn't a major situation, but it was a situation in 2 homes that I owned, and that was the noise level. Like, we get so excited looking at the architecture and the price and everything. It's like, oh, yeah, this is it. But kind of overlook, going there at different times during the day. One of those was I was near a train station. It was actually not close to it, but it was, well, guess what? Every time they blurred that horn, I'd be laying in bed and I would hear it. And then another time I thought I was far enough from it wasn't a major road, but it was a, pretty well-traveled secondary road. And in one bedroom, you could hear cars going by. These are the things that, I would have never thought of. So I'm just bringing that, one of those things up there. Consider the noise level, or, could be near an airport. When you're checking out the house, and by the way, we've got an airport, small one, near where I am and where all these houses were. Some of them, when they diverted planes, you're in the path. You got to be aware of that kind of stuff.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're buying, say you're buying in a subdivision, but, just on the, there's a there's a road that comes into the subdivision, and then the road's spread out and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at, what's the deal, though, that what are they building across the street from the entrance to the subdivision? Is that a commercial development? If so, what is that going to bring in terms of increased traffic, increased noise, so on and so forth? That's not something here in New Orleans itself that we have to deal with because, there's such a limited amount of land, and, demolishing property here is not the easiest thing to do when you're dealing with historic neighborhoods, historic homes, and there's not a lot of commercial zoning within the city itself. But, on the outer lying areas in the metropolitan area at large, that's something that, you've got to be cognizant of, or your real estate agent needs to do some research and get you that information. You see this construction project across the street and down a little bit. What is going in there? Is it going to be a big shopping center, with a Trader Joe's and, a Target and all these, these big sort of entities that draw a lot of business, a lot more traffic.
Even the windows, so many times that we take it for granted. I had a perfect house, it's great. Then you look at the quality of the windows, and you've got drafts, you've got, you're going to be paying extra for heating that home when it gets cold out. And again, it's almost as if, I liken it to meeting the perfect partner. You're smitten in the beginning, but you're not looking very closely at some of the things that maybe that person is trying to tell you, i.e. that house is trying to tell you, like the windows. They're cheap builder windows. You might need to upgrade those. Any other things that stand out for you that we should be looking at?
I think, obviously most people are going to narrow down location in terms of what's most convenient for them, what's most desirable for them, and that those factors. But what happens if your most desirable neighborhood is out of your price range? You've been priced out of that neighborhood. I think being open to exploring other areas, other neighborhoods, is something that people a lot of times they get a little set, and their mindset gets a little solidified of, I've got to be in this neighborhood. Well, if that's not a reality, then let's go explore some other neighborhoods and see if we can find something that is very similar. May not be everything, but are you close enough to the neighborhood that you really like because of the amenities or your friends, family? Are you close enough to that neighborhood will be a feasible option for you to consider? I think that's a factor that a lot of people, I from a New Orleans standpoint, it's very interesting. It still is after all this time, it's still very interesting to me when people are moving here from other places. And they have this vision in their mind of what all New Orleans houses look like. And the reality is, they don't. We have a very diverse, as we've discussed in the past, a very diverse portfolio of architectural styles within the city itself. But I remember when there was a big influx of people coming here from other major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles. And every single client that I would work with from California would say to me, well, I want this and I want that, and I want a front porch. I want a front porch and I want off-street parking. And I'm like, okay, well, not every house in New Orleans has a front porch, and very few houses in historic neighborhoods have off-street parking. So it's managing the client's expectations, and I think that, as a potential buyer, you've got to have, sometimes you've got to have a little reality check from your agent, and you've got to be realistic about your goals, again, going back to your needs versus your wants.
It's funny. We did talk about the porches last time we got together, and my vision is, most of them have porches because it's kind of a thing in New Orleans. But to your point, that's not every home. Final question, and I wonder about this. Do you find that people sometimes buy too much house? They have, grandiose plans, maybe family. They're thinking, I need a bigger house, but then they really don't. Has that happened? Have you encountered that?
I've encountered that a couple of times. It's not something that occurs frequently with me, or from my experience. I have had, a number of clients who I helped them buy their first house when they first got married and they're just starting out, and then child number one comes along, and then suddenly everything's fine, but then child number two is coming, and we don't have the space. So they've come back, and I've helped them upgrade, so to speak. I think the most frequency in which we see what you described is somebody who's, their children are now adults. They've moved away. They have this big grand home, 5 bedrooms, 3,500 square feet, what have you. And now it's just, they're getting older. It's just the two of them. Those are the people who are most likely to be in that situation where they have bought something that they are now ready to sell, simply because of the upkeep, simply because they don't need the space, the expenses, and so on and so forth. And a lot of those people who choose to stay here locally, a lot of them will sell and they'll downsize, and oftentimes even go into a condominium because then they have no real anything to really manage. They don't have to do repair work. If the roof is bad, they may have to pay a special assessment to the condo association to have the roof replaced, but they don't have to, get bids and hire the roofing contractor and deal with the nightmare that goes along with replacing a roof, because that's a big undertaking.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's funny. I want to share in closing here, completely digressing, but I have a friend coworker who sold his house in Florida, and he's homeless. He lives on the road. He can do that because he does digital work. He calls himself a digital nomad, and he does Airbnb. And he says, I pocketed money from the sale of the home, and I don't have to worry about the roof. I don't have to worry about anything. And right now he is in the Dominican Republic for a month. He was in Egypt a couple of months ago. A lot of times he goes back to Orlando, just gets an Airbnb, and that's how he lives.
Yeah. I mean, downsizing looks different for everybody.
Sure.
Some people downsize and move away. Some people, like some older couples will sell, their family, their children, their grandchildren are all in Atlanta. So they'll sell, they've got a big house, they sell, they move up to Atlanta, or they'll buy a condo in Atlanta, but they really, or they may keep a condo here. Sure. Because all their social network is really still here in New Orleans, but they want to be closer to the grandchildren. So they'll buy a small house outside of Atlanta, and they'll split the time between two places. So I think, as people's life changes, whether professionally or aging or whatever, has a lot to do with your decisions as far as what do I need in terms of housing and where do I want that to be.
You have a wonderful, personalized, focus style. Really love it. And your passion shines through. I got to tell you, Brett. The website, Witry Collection, WCNOLA.com. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's actually Witry Collective.
Collective. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, there is a collection of wonderful homes on the site. And also, I love how it's broken down into the type of home. Like right now, I'm looking at traditional homes. Really, I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. It's a very warm and fuzzy feel when you look at the website and the way it's presented. And I detect the same thing coming from you, Brett, as our Diamond of the Decade. Thank you so much for being here today and all the insight. And looking forward next time we get together.
Sounds great. I look forward to it as well.
Same. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Jason Derulo. I love that music connects to people all over the country. But unfortunately, so does something else. childhood hunger. 15 million kids struggle with hunger right here in America. And yet, every year, billions of pounds of surplus food in the U.S. go to waste instead of going to the children in need. Feeding America is working to change this. The Feeding America nationwide network of food banks rescues this surplus of food to help provide meals to families in virtually every community in the United States, including yours. But they just can't do this alone. Join me in the fight against hunger in America. For more information on what you can do to get involved, visit feedingamerica.org. That's feedingamerica.org. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.